Hello, everyone, and a Happy New Year. Welcome back to the first Lilja and Lou podcast of 2013. And I've already wished my co-host Lilja a Happy New Year, but I'll do it in the podcast. Happy New Year, Lilja.
Thank you, and same to you.
And we're kicking off this year with a couple of items for you. We're going to be talking about our top 5 Stephen King moments of 2012, as well as we're going to be doing a what's coming up in 2013. And we're also going to be giving you the news as well. So that's our show for this podcast. Hope you guys all enjoy it. And now on to Marv's Mailbag.
For this episode, we have some comments on Facebook that we are going to read to you. The first one is from Domi Katstein, I think it's pronounced that way, who writes, "Bring more about Dark Tower. This is something that we'll probably do along the line."
Well, we will in one respect, because we know that Bev Vincent has done an update to his Road to the Dark Tower, so we definitely have him coming on the podcast around the release time of his book, which I believe is in March or April, so look forward to that. So there definitely will be some more Dark Tower discussion.
Yeah, and there's been an updated version of Robin Firth's version of the Dark Tower Concordance that is actually out now, so I guess we're going to talk about that in an upcoming podcast.
Okay. We have a very interesting question from Josiah, and he asks us, which little-known author do you think is most similar to Stephen King? And that is a very good question, and I really don't have an answer off the top of my head. Do you, Hans?
I'm tempted to say Richard Bachman, but I guess that's not really what he's
after.
No,
yeah, he wants some other writer. So this, we'll throw this out to our listeners. If you've come across an author that you feel you are the only one that knows about, and you think he reminds you a lot of Stephen King, then please send us in some comments, and we'll make sure to bring that author's name out to the rest of the listeners as well. So that's a very great question, Josiah, and I would love to find another writer kind of like Stephen King, but I personally can't really say that I've come across that yet.
Yeah, no. Maybe we have some writer out there who think he or she is like Stephen King that would like to comment. Send in. It's a chance to push your own book. Mm-hmm. Next comment is from David Mayer. "I really like the podcast you are doing with all of the remakes they are making now. What movie of Stephen King would you say they need to not touch, and the one they need to remake? So which movie should they not remake, and which one should they remake?"
Okay, well, for me, the first one is easy, and if you've listened to our podcast, you know that my all-time favorite movie is The Shawshank Redemption. So I think that movie is close as you're going to get to perfection for a movie, and I don't see any need to redo that one.
Yeah, I agree. That one or The Green Mile. Yeah, I think that would be
Misery.
Totally waste to remake. Yeah. Misery, yeah. And The Green Mile would be a total waste to remake, because that is such a great movie. So I don't know how they could make that one better. Which one to remake?
Well, geez, there's so many bad ones.
Yeah, and I'm thinking there's 2 reasons to remake a movie. Either because it's really bad and you think you can make it better, or maybe it's an older one that when it was done they didn't have a way to make the special effects or stuff like that as good as they should be. So that could be a reason for a remake. It's a hard one. As you said, there are so many.
Some of them shouldn't be remade because they're so bad, and I don't think even at the very best they would still end up being like a B movie, and I'm thinking of any of the Children of the Corn movies. I don't think that's a premise that really will ever make it into a AAA plus title. That's just B movie material. So to remake those, I don't see the point. But
they did one remake, and it was even more terrible than the first one. So
I don't think they need to remake The Dead Zone either. I think that one's pretty good, even though it's a bit dated. One of the ones that I would like to see remade, and it's kind of not a bad movie already, but I just think it has some story problems, and it doesn't quite payoff at the end is Pet Sematary, which I believe has been rumored to be up for remake as well. But that's a story that really freaks me out. I mean, the parts with the cat in the original movie are so well done. That cat just scares the living daylights out of me. But the problem for me is the casting. Some of it worked and some of it didn't. I think Fred Gwynne as the neighbor was awesome. And I think the little boy that played the kid was awesome. But the husband and wife don't really work for me. And there were some structural problems with that movie, too, where King tried to make the ghost of that one person that Louis treated at the university that died. That didn't quite work for me. So I think that's a movie with a lot of potential that hasn't been fully tapped yet, and I'd like to see Pet Sematary remade. Yeah,
I think that the remake that they planned to do that didn't get made would have been quite different. They were focusing on other characters and making the kids older, and I think it was a rather different movie. So I don't know if that would have been would work. I think a lot of King fans would have been disappointed that it was so different from the book.
And another one I think I would like to see remade, and even though it was done recently, is Bag of Bones, because as I love that book, and I don't think that the miniseries focused on the proper things. And unfortunately, because they had to age up the characters, the little girl and her mother, that to me undermines a lot of the power of that story. So I would like to see that redone, but to do it as a movie would be tough because there's just so much story in there.
Yeah, I think that one is a really hard book to turn into a movie. One movie that I would like to see remade the right way is The Lawn Mover Man, because as it is now, it really isn't based on Stephen King's story at all. But if they would make a movie that's based on the real story, I think that would be a great movie. There was a short. There were a short movie, Doll Baby, made, and that one is so much better than the one with Pierce Brosnan. Okay. So I think if they could make it like that, but with a lot more money and maybe a little less nude guy running after a lawnmower, but I think that could be a great movie.
And another one that I could see being remade as well, which because the original has very little bearing or relationship to the story, is The Running Man. But in this post-9/11 world, I don't know how well people would take to that story. But I just think that story is far superior to what they ended up filming.
Yeah. I think the only similarities with the book and the movie is the title and the name of the character. I think that's about everything. So
that was a very great question, David. Thank you very much for sending that in. All right, so we have one last comment, and that is from Hazel Bentley, and she wants to know more about the book that Stephen King is currently working on, which is rumored to be a crime novel called Mr. Mercedes. And this one caught us off guard and kind of embarrassed because it was in the video from Stephen King's lecture at UMass. But what did you find out about that book, Hans?
Yeah. I must admit that when I read that comment, I didn't have a clue to what Mr. Mercedes was, but we did some searching on the internet, and as you mentioned, it's in that video, and it's also been posted in late December on web pages, so I have to blame it on Christmas and everything. But still, Mr. Mercedes is a book King is working on. It's not supernatural, but it's a detective novel involving a person who drove a car into a crowd of people and then taunted the detectives who handled the case after his retirement. That's basically all we know. It started as a short story and has now turned into a 500-page manuscript, which is turned into a book, basically. And this was something King mentioned in his speech, and someone commented on it on the official Stephen King message board, and the moderator there stated that it was a book that King was working on, but it would be at least 2014 until we would see it. And the title, Mr. Mercedes, would probably be changed by then because Stephen wasn't very happy with it himself. So we know about a new book.
Yes, thank you very much. That's a great way to start off the year, to know that there's going to be a book in 2014 already.
Yeah, definitely.
Welcome. Do not fear the door that lies before you. We will protect you. We are your guides, Hans and Lou, and we will give you the latest in Stephen King news. But before we do so, you must prove yourself worthy. You must open the door and join us in the death room.
will move on to the news. And the first news we have already talked about, which was Mr. Mercedes, which is a book King is working on, as we said. So, moving on to other news. The remake of Carrie has been delayed, and it's been moved from March 15 to October 18, which is around Halloween. And we haven't really gotten any explanation to why, just that it fits better in Halloween time. And I agree that since it's a horror movie, it works better in Halloween than in March. But at the same time, it's strange because it's not like they didn't know it was a horror movie and they set the March date. And then someone watched the movie and, oh, what the heck, this is a horror movie, we have to move it. So I don't know why, if it's been test screened and the audience wasn't very happy with it, or...
Yeah, it's... The original release date always kind of surprised me because February, March is kind of like the quiet time for releasing movies. So maybe they thought it was going to be a lesser movie than what they ended up with. Yeah. And I personally take it as a good sign that it's been moved to later in the year. And it will stay fresher in people's minds if by any chance it's good enough that it might grab some Oscar buzz. But this just seemed like a natural near Halloween release date just seems much more a better fit. I'm personally glad on the one hand that they've rethought this. It is disappointing that it's going to be pushed back so far, but I just think that it's for its financial health. I just think that October is a better release time for this movie.
Yeah. And this might be a common way to do things in the movie business that we just don't know about and think it's strange that they move so much, but who knows?
Alrighty, so the next item is Under the Dome has got a premiere date, and that is June 24th, and that will be on CBS at 10 p.m. And if you go to our 2013 section of the podcast, you'll find some more discussion about this item.
Yep. And our last news item for this episode is that in the current issue of Entertainment Weekly, King talks about Dr. Sleep, Shining sequel. And I am not sure if this issue is actually out yet or if it's about to come out any day. But as soon as it is, I think you should grab a copy of it. It also shows a early sketch for the cover, which is a pretty simple cover. Doesn't tell us very much about the book, but still it's nice. It's very different both in the style and the name. Stephen King, in the font that his name is written, is totally different from what we're used to. So I'm not sure if this is just something they did for just to have something, or if it was actually meant to be the cover. But I guess we will have to wait and see. The book will be out in September 24. But if you want to, you can read about it in the current issue of Entertainment Weekly.
Cool.
Yep.
And that's the news.
This is great. What's our job? We'd like drive around and pick up stiffs or what?
It's time for reviews from the night shift.
Yes, and we are going to list our top 5 moments, Stephen King moments from 2012. We're going to start with our 5th place and then move up to the number 1 spot. And Lou, do you want to start with the first? Your top 5?
Sure. My number 5 pick in a year that was a very busy Stephen King year. I'm going to put down the announcement that the Ghost Brothers of Darkland County is going to be released on CD and DVD this year. So that was something that we were waiting for a lot last year, and I'm really glad that we got the announcement that something's going to be coming out this year.
Yeah, I agree. It was great news, especially for us who didn't get to see the performance.
Absolutely. And how about you, Hans? What's yours number 5?
My number 5 is when I got to listen to King reading Afterlife on YouTube. Yeah, I really liked that story, so it was great to get a full story. I was expecting him to read just a section of something he was working on, but getting a full story just like that, that's my my number 5 spot.
Okay. Number 4 was the short story, totally unexpected, Batman and Robin Have an Altercation. I just thought that this was Stephen King at his best. I know he is earmarked for writing very long, sprawling stories, but when he puts his mind to it, he can write a very short and compact story, and I thought that this was just a fantastic story about the relationship between an aging father and his son. So I really liked how this played out.
I have to agree, and actually that is my number 5 place, number 4 place as well.
Ah,
so
very good.
Yeah.
Okay.
We are totally unanimous there.
Alrighty, well, we're going to mix things up a little bit here because my number 3 pick was your number 5 pick, and that was Stephen King reading Afterlife at the UMass appearance that he did very late last year. And like you, and we've mentioned this before on other podcasts, I think Bag of Bones is probably my favorite audiobook. And I just love hearing Stephen King reading his own stories because he just brings that element of being the author of the story. So it just brings that extra dimension to the story that even the good narrators can't do because they obviously earned in the head of Mr. King. So just listening to him read that story was just wonderful. And that's kind of one of the cool things of today's day and age, that you can see something like this so quickly on these YouTube clips and whatnot. So I think it was just really wonderful what technology is bringing us. And I love watching Stephen King, or even listening to Stephen King read his own stories.
Yeah. And this one gave us an extra dimension that we actually get to see him reading.
Absolutely.
And he really lived the story, so
yeah.
It was a good moment.
Yeah, very good point, yeah.
Yeah. My number 3 is something that started on April 19th.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any guess?
Oh, our podcast. Well.
Exactly.
Oh, that's very kind of you.
Yeah, I think this is a great way to talk about King and the comments that we get. I wish there were more of them on audio files, but I hope that will change now.
Mm-hmm.
But get comments on the Facebook page, and people seem to enjoy this, and so do I. So I think this is great, and we have gotten the chance to talk to people and talk about stuff, and so I think this is a great moment from last year.
Okay, well that's awesome. I was going to add that as outside the top 5 list of Stephen King things because it's not directly a Stephen King thing, but
no, I know.
Yeah, but I agree with you. I really, really enjoy doing these podcasts with you, and the fact that Mr. King keeps out pumping the material, we have a pile of stuff that we want to go through still, so that's great. We were kind of worried at the beginning that after a couple of podcasts we were going to run out of things to say, so
yeah,
it's been pretty fantastic, and hopefully we'll be able to bring some pretty cool stuff to our listeners this year as well.
Yeah.
Alrighty, so number 2.
Yep.
Was the Stephen King release of a new Dark Tower book, and that was Wind Through the Keyhole. And it nicely fit in between the established storyline, and at the same time it fleshed out some backstory for Roland as well. So, plus it was a really cool story within a story within a story exercise that Mr. King did. And again, a short book, but it still shows that he's on top of his game, and it was really nice to revisit with these characters again.
Yeah. I couldn't agree with you more, because I actually have that as number 2 as well.
And no, folks, we did not compare lists before this started.
No, we did not. No, I think that was a great moment to get to revisit with these characters. And I like the way that King managed to put this book in between the books that you had already read. You know where they came from, and you know their fate as well. Still, the in-between part was exciting, and I liked it. It was a great book. It's a great book.
Yep. Alrighty. So now we come down to it. Number 1.
Yep.
Even though this book was out a couple of years ago, I just was very happy to be able to get a copy of Knowing Darkness. I think up there with Bev Vincent's illustrated Stephen King book. This is one of the greatest coffee table books that I own. I'm not much in the way for collecting. I'm more of a reader. I'm not really a collector, so I don't really get the attraction of collectible limited editions. I know there's people out there that put a high premium on doing things like that, but I'm more into the story rather than the collectibles. But this is just a fantastic book. I haven't even got through all the way yet. I kind of dole it out like pieces of candy because the artwork in it is just fantastic, and it's just amazing to see and track the impact that King's career has had on other people as well. So again, I would highly recommend that if you can track down this book. I was able to get what was termed a damaged copy at a much reduced price, and I can't find anything wrong with it. So I'm really, really happy with this book, and it's one of those, little Stephen King treasures that I really enjoy from time to time.
Yeah, it is a great book. I agree with you. Mm. My number 1 is actually the announcement of Dr. Sleep. I didn't think this book would happen. It's been rumored, and the King has joked about that he wants to see what happened to Danny and Charlie from Firestarter, and if they made a family and stuff. So, but I think it's very exciting that he's going back to this character and we are going to revisit him after several years after the first book. So I think this will be a great book. With that said, I also think that this book was the reason for one of the biggest disappointment during 2012, and that was when it was moved from the release date in January to September. So, but I have faith in this book. I think it will be a great book.
Absolutely. And people should check out your January 13th post. You have early cover sketch for the book, which looks pretty cool. Don't know if that will survive, but I definitely like it.
Yeah.
So there you go, folks. That's our top 5.
And I have a bonus, like you did also that I have to mention.
Okay.
In February, there was a picture of a book by Stephen King picturing a biker riding in the moonlight, and the title of the book was Cycle Zombies.
Okay.
And since you know I love zombies, you can imagine my excitement of this book. But as it turned out, this was a fake book used in a episode of the TV series Sons of Anarchy. So it was pretty cool that they did this book, but unfortunately it was not a real book. I think this would have been an exciting book.
Okay, very cool.
Yeah.
So that's Hans and I's top 5 Stephen King moments. Please feel free to send in yours either through in the comment sections or send us the audio message using the neat little widget that is on Hans' site right now. If you go to the podcast page on Lilja's site, you'll see this little widget on the right-hand side. It's very easy. You just click on it. You can record, I believe, we'd like to keep it under 3 minutes if possible. And we'll include it in our podcast. So it's as easy as it can be now, folks. Please take advantage of it.
Can't be much easier.
Yeah.
Yep.
And Hans had put up a post on his Facebook page for some feedback from you listeners as well for your top 5 or any top Stephen King moments, and we got some responses, so we're going to go through those. So Hans, why don't you start with the first one?
Yes, the first one is from Desiree Ross, who enjoyed Full Dark No Stars and 11/22/63, and also Haven. She doesn't really rank them, but I think those 3 were her top moments of last year.
Okay. And Holly Spears has listed her number 1 moment from the article that Stephen King wrote to other super rich people like himself, I guess, including Mitt Romney, for taxing him appropriately. So that was a very interesting moment. We don't really get into political issues on this podcast, but it was very intriguing to see Stephen King chastising the government for not taxing him properly.
Yeah. Then we have Cleo Parker, who says that seeing him in Atlanta on opening night of Ghost Brothers. Yeah, I bet that was a great moment.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep.
Would have wanted to be there.
Yeah. Then we have Lindsay Farrell Smalley, who mentions the short story collection book Full Dark No Stars, and she also lists the announcements that Joyland and Dr. Sleep are coming out this year. So, and plus she also mentions the On Again, Off Again Dark Tower being made into a movie series. So, but her favorite moment was his sale of a rare book, signed book, for which the money was targeted to help people in Maine who help heat their homes. So very, very good one, Lindsay. I'm glad you reminded us of that.
Yep. Then we have J.C. Scribbins, who read 15 King novels during the last year.
Wow.
And I must say I'm envy. I wish I had 15 unread Stephen King novels to read.
Yeah.
Yep.
Blake Harrison also has listed 5 for us, which is awesome, and he's got Return to Midworld and Visiting Roland and Wind Through the Keyhole, time traveling back to 11/22/63, listening to our podcast is number 3, news of the Cell movie is number 4, and news of the Underdome movie. And going through these comments, I'm realizing that a couple of these things, like 11/22/63, I agree, was a great, great book.
Yeah.
And it really should be on the top 5 list, but I just felt that those short stories that he did were something that we don't get very often, so that's why I've mentioned them as opposed to any of his books this year, just in case people are wondering why.
Yeah, we could only pick 5 moments, so there are a lot more. Next out is Karen Oakton, who says her number 5 moment is 1922, because it's a mixture of romance and terror, and I agree, that is a fantastic story. 4th place is showing section of the Shawshank Redemption to my film student class and revealing the author, that horror guy. Wow. Yeah, that's something King used to mention in speeches, that he does other things than just scare people. And here is a spoiler for those who haven't read 11/22/63, so put your hands for your ears for a little while, because her third place is sobbing my heart out and cheering out loud at one of Sadie's bits in 11/22/63. Second place, being shaken into reaction by the Dallas description, also in 11/22/63. They are so realistic. She's having been in a similar situation. And number one is same as I had, reading about Dr. Sleep.
Okay.
Yep.
And up next we have Renee Aho, who talks about being in a bookstore and talking to a girl who had attended a reading by Mr. King and saying that he was very happy and yet at the same time jealous for her.
Yeah. Oliver Deininger, whose favorite moment was finishing 11/22/63. So a lot of people seem to like that book.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And Danny Vandemont echoes Oliver's sentiments. Plus, he was able to meet Stephen King in Savannah for Q&A and get an autographed copy. And he says then repeat that 4 more times. So,
yeah.
So there you go. So we want to thank all of you who sent us in some feedback for your top 5 moments. Obviously, there's going to be a lot of overlap, but it's just how everybody reacts to it was what makes it nice and personalized for each of us.
Yeah.
Okay, so that ends our segment on the top 5 moments of 2012 for Stephen King.
Yep. So, and as everyone know, now we have 2013. And of course, there will be a lot of Stephen King stuff happening this year as well. We have some bigger stuff that we're going to mention. And the first out is the remake of Carrie, which I think we have mentioned in every podcast so far. And that we will continue to mention since it's been pushed forward from March 15 to October 18. So it will be around Halloween that we can enjoy that one and see if it's as good as the original.
And then up next was the big news that the big book, the Under the Dome book, Stephen King, is going to TV as a 12 or 13 episode series airing on CBS, and it was scheduled to be a summer series, and now we know the premiere date, and that will be at Monday, June 24th at 10 p.m. on CBS. And I have to say, I'm really excited for this one. It's a co-production between Stephen King and Steven Spielberg's Amblin Entertainment. So those are 2 very powerful people working together on a project. They've tried to work on other projects together before, but it's nice to see that they are finally able to get together and work on this series. So it'll be very interesting to see how they handle the series. I believe that their intention is not to follow the book strictly, especially the ending, which for probably a lot of people is a good thing because most people don't like the ending. But,
me included.
Yeah, so it'll be very interesting to see how they do this. It has the potential to become like a summer version of Lost, which would be kind of cool.
Yeah. I think they will definitely make it open up for it to continue for more than one season.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So my concerns with this one is, I have 2 concerns with it. One is that they will give it an open ending and not be renewed. Something that happened with the TV series Golden Years that King wrote.
Yeah.
That the original ending that was in the TV series didn't really tell us anything. And they did a alternate version that was released on DVD that had an ending that was not that good, really. So that's one concern I have with this one. And the second one is that if it hasn't been planned long before we know about it, it seems that everything has gone very, very fast with this one. I mean, it's January and they are planning to show it in the summer, so they won't have long to start filming and everything. And I imagine that there will be quite some special effects in it with the dome coming down and cutting things in half and everything. So I'm a bit concerned that it's somewhat stressed out and maybe not given the time it needs to be well done. But then again, you never know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, those are the regular pitfalls of TV production versus movie production. But
yeah.
Again, Steven Spielberg definitely has the infrastructure behind him, his production companies, to do this kind of work. So I'm going to stay optimistic. But I'm more concerned about the long, overarching story arc of how they are going to play it out, and if they're changing the ending, what are they going to do? And I don't really want it to become some sort of a government conspiracy story.
No.
And that's the thing I would be worried about. But if they're going to go with the alien intervention kind of thing too, that has to be handled a lot more delicately than it was in the book.
Yeah. I agree. So it will be interesting. Yeah.
Yep.
Next thing is, and I call this the big Stephen King book for this year, which is Dr. Sleep, that will tell us more about Danny Torrance and what he does now as an adult. And I have big hopes for this book. I think this one will be great. And it's being released September 24th. So it's quite a bit until we'll have it in our hands. But I think it will be well worth waiting for.
Yeah,
so,
I think everybody's really looking forward to that.
Yeah.
And fortunately, before September, we'll get a bit of a bonus or another treat in the fact that Joyland is being released, another Stephen King novel by Hardcase Crimes, and that is being released on June 4th, 2013. And this one is being presented as a pretty straight crime drama. Even though this is being handled by Hardcase Crimes, which usually just handles straightforward crime drama stories, Stephen King book is going to be released by them, and he says that he loves crimes, he loves mysteries, and he loves ghosts. So there may be supernatural elements into the story. I don't think it's going to be predominantly so, but it takes place in a carny, which is kind of spooky enough to begin with. So I'm really looking forward to see what he does with this. And you should check out Lilja's site for the Joyland press release, because you can see a nice graphic of what cover art is going to be, and it looks very cool. It says, "Who dares to enter the fun house of fear? Joyland," the new novel from Stephen King. This should be a nice tide us over until we get what I think many of us agree with Hans is the big treat of this year is going to be Dr. Sleep.
Yeah. And this book is interesting. I haven't read much about Joyland, just the brief description that we have, but there's something that makes me very interested in this one. I have a really good feeling about this one. I can't really say why, but I think this will be a great book.
I agree. I'm looking forward to both of them.
Yeah. It's going to be a great year with books this year.
Mm-hmm.
And the last thing we're going to mention that's being released this year is something that we have waited for a long time. And that is Ghost Brothers of Darkland County. First, we had to wait really long until the stage version was actually performed, many years. And now, on March 19, we are finally going to get it on CD, DVD, and book. So we are going to get it all. And personally, I really look forward to this one. We have seen some clips and heard people talk about it, but I think there will be much to look forward in this one.
Mm-hmm. This one has probably the most, and this will be out the earliest. It's in March.
Yeah.
And this one has the potential for the most surprises and enjoyment, because if you go for the CD DVD combo, this is going to be a multimedia presentation that should have links to websites as well, material. So this is definitely a full multimedia presentation, and as we talked about in our previous podcast about ebooks and that and the future of them, this is kind of a sort of a crossover into that territory. And I've always been a big John Cougar fan, and obviously a big Stephen King fan. So and the talent that they have lined up for here, I'm really hoping that this is going to be something special as well. Yeah,
it'll be great. It looks like a great year this year, as every year has been for the last years. So King is working, and we can't complain. We are getting 2 books so far. He might pop one out, one more out,
or a couple
of short stories. So, this year will be a great year.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And there you go, folks. That is our first podcast of 2013. I hope you enjoyed it. And as a preview to what we're going to be doing in our next podcast, Hans, what's the first thing we got scheduled?
Yeah, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to review the last 4 episodes of Season 3 of Haven. The 2 last will have aired by then, so we're going to go through the last 4. And this is the last one for Season 3, but as you all know, there will be a Season 4 that we don't know really when it will air, but probably later this year.
Mm-hmm. And just a reminder to all our listeners, thank you very much for the Facebook comments that you gave us about things that you would like to see in 2013. And we're still putting together our plans for this year. And if you've come up with anything since that previous posting on the Facebook, please continue to send in throughout the year, actually, things that you would like to hear us do on the podcast for 2013.
Yes, and when you do that, if you like it, please use the audio widget And you will find that one on the podcast site at Lilja's Library. And we would love to actually hear you speak, since this is a podcast. So please use that one.
Yes.
And
don't be shy.
Maybe, just maybe, we will throw in something for the best comment.
Ooh.
Yeah.
No, see, now he's trying to bribe you. Come on, use that widget, folks. Alrighty, and lastly, for our next podcast, we'll be reviewing the comic strip Green God of Agony that ran over at the Stephen King official website. So until then, take care, so long, and Hans.
Stay safe, but stay scared.
The end.
Yeah. Was that right? Stay safe, but stay scared?
Yep.
Yeah.
That's it.
Just when I was about to say it, I was, whoops.
Yeah.
It's been too long.